one of you felt restricted to spiritual practices that often seem outdated and of little relevance in today's world? Are you discouraged to express your own creative talents and develop spiritual practices that are uniquely you? The Liturgical Rebels podcast is for people like you who want to reimagine and reconstruct their faith and spiritual practices. It's for those who want to reshape belief and journey closer to God's wholeness with peace, justice, and flourishing, not just for themselves, but for the earth and all its inhabitants. In today's episode, I will be in conversation with my good friend Kathy Escobar. Kathy is co-founder and community cultivator at the Refuge, a hub for healing community, social action, and creative collaboration in North Denver, Colorado. She's a pastor, spiritual director, speaker, advocate, and author of several books, including Faith Shift, Finding Your Way Forward When Everything You Believe is Coming Apart. She's also co-founder of Community Heals, a non-profit organization dedicated to creating accessible experiences on the water and in the mountains for people of all ages. Kathy and I will chat about her writing and the impact of Faith Shift, her work at the Refuge and Community Heals, as well as the devastating impact of the death of her son Jared on her and her family. Kathy, it's so wonderful to have you finally on the Liturgical Rebels. Two reasons. Firstly, it's a long time since we've talked. And secondly, because you really are one of the first liturgical rebels I think that I met.
No, it's so fun to hang out with you today.
It's great. So, and it's 10 years. I was looking at the date that Faith Shift came out, and it was 2014. So it's 10 years since you wrote Faith Shift, which I think was a seminal book for many people in the process of negotiating the evolving of faith and the disillusionment that they were feeling. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about Faith Shift and the impact that it had on your life writing this, and also on the lives of some of the people that have read it and corresponded with you?
Yeah, it's the Faith Shift is such a special project to me. And I honestly cannot believe it's been a decade. That is the interesting part about time. But at the same time, so much has happened in the wider world in the last 10 years and in the faith space. So when Faith Shift came out, it's called Faith Shift, Finding Your Way Forward When Everything You Believe is Coming Apart. And the project was really just a super special project for me because I didn't set out to write it. Convergence came to me and it was like, let's work on this project together. That was really based on a blog series that I did that was centered on it's for so many of us in my story. I came from a system that was very rigid for a season in my life, and it stopped working. And when things stop working, things come apart. And so language of deconstruction was not just in language, it was like in my body, what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing so many things that I used to hold dear. And then we knew a lot of other people in that same space. The biggest part about Faith Shift that was special to me, though, wasn't just about talking about that. It was also talking about when we do lose it all and it all unravels, how can we reimagine something different?
Yes.
And so that's really been my big story of the last 10 years. And what was before then, for me, my faith deconstruction and unraveling from really conservative evangelicalism started in 2000. It started way before 2006.
Uh-huh.
2006 was a time that I bombed out of the system that I had been part of for a long time on a church staff. And it's just kind of all the questions, all the doubts, all the realities of power just hit in the place where it was like, something isn't right here. And so that many years ago, 18 years ago now, I've seen the evolution in my own story, and then so many people. So, what is fascinating about it is that those of us who 10 years ago were reading it and finding our way, and the biggest part about Face Shift that I want to say is I think it just gave language to
Mm-hmm.
what people were experiencing. And
Yes.
so, because it is so much pain when you lose beliefs, then you lose the structures that support those beliefs, and then you lose the relationships that are part of those structures, and then a lot of us lose our identity. And
Yes.
that is what a lot of people were experiencing. And so, this many years later, what's fascinating, and as I still get messages from people that just now picked it up. And so they're just now picking it up, and they're just now like getting into this stream of huge revolution in their life, of everything kind of being an upheaval that happens, and then people really finding their way. And that's what's fun. The last thing I'll say is just that seeing where people are 10 years later, 18 years later, it has really been remarkable. And people have landed in all different places, but on the whole, everyone is healthier and more engaged in spiritual practices and ways of moving in the world and are okay. But the getting there has been so complicated for
Mm-hmm.
some of us.
Oh, it certainly is. Well, and it's interesting because I think that the kind of momentum to deconstruct and then hopefully reconstruct has really gained steam since you wrote your book. And so many more people are talking about deconstructing. Unfortunately, I find less people talking about reconstructing, which is what I really want to focus on, because I think that if we just deconstruct, we end up in a worse place than we were in before. And it's only as we start to reconstruct that we really find that closer relationship with God and that closer relationship with the world around us that I think God really calls us to. And so I I love the fact that you have gotten involved in other things since then that show how your faith has grown over these 10 years. And
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just going to say, share a little bit with us some of what you have done in these last 10 years to reconstruct your faith.
Well, and I stopped using the word reconstruction. And in the book, the movements are really fusing, and then some of us things get shifting, and we kind of get rattled. A lot of us return back to fusing, which is really conforming to the system. A lot of us, and that's really what we're talking about, people have an unraveling or a big deconstruction. Some people sever completely,
Mm-hmm.
or at least for a while, maybe not forever. But a lot of people do desire something beyond the unraveling. And in the book, the language for that is rebuilding. And probably
Yes.
about 5 years ago, I started shifting that language to reimagining. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I use now. If I was writing Faith Shift today, I would put reimagining faith instead of rebuilding faith or
I
reconstruct.
like that. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
in reimagining / rebuilding / reconstruction, the core values there are freedom, mystery, and diversity.
Mm.
And in unraveling, the core values are living with uncertainty, authenticity, and autonomy. And so in reimagining, and that's really what I think we're always in, if we're honest in our faith and we are pursuing change and transforming as people, we'll always kind of be in that unraveling, reimagining, unraveling, reimagining. And
Mm.
there's a little cycle there. And so I feel like that's what the last really 18 years has been like for me. And I think so what in my work really has been giving space. The problem with no one can make someone reconstruct or reimagine. It has to come from people's personal journey and an openness. But what I have found is a lot of people have done it without that language,
Mm.
and that there really has been a desire to find greater freedom, mystery, and diversity
Mm-hmm.
in relationship with God. spirit, universe. People use different language, Jesus, where people are in different places. But I think for me, I have seen, especially in the last chunk of years, really moving out, trying to find ways to talk and experience God without saying the word God or Jesus, and to see in nature has become a very healing factor. And I think it's a big factor in reimagining faith for a lot of people.
Yes.
And so I've always done stuff outside, and that's always been really a special piece. But the past chunk of years, that has really gotten stronger for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Probably the thing that has kept me as like one of my primary spiritual practices is grounding in nature. And if you think about it, there's so much freedom, there's so much mystery, and there's so much diversity.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
And I really think I love the creativity and the desire, because I think there's a lot of desire in people. People don't want to lose it all. No one wants to lose it all.
Yes.
And what we're losing, I always just say, like, we're losing the things that they didn't bring freedom and life. It was the things that constrict. And then how do we become open to things that open us up? Because then so much more possibility exists. So that's been a big piece of my story. A lot of my language has changed over the last 10 years. But I'm still grounded in a community, and we are doing spiritual practices every day. A lot of them weren't the typical spiritual practices that I was taught in a conservative faith.
Well, and I was very aware of that when I visited you in Denver, and particularly when I went to your church, the Refuge, which to me is a church like no other church, in terms of the way you do church, in terms of the people who are involved, just very alive and phenomenal to me. So can you tell us a bit more about the church too? Because I think that that's probably one of the ways that you live out your reimagined faith, I suspect.
Yeah, the Refuge has evolved too. And it's so fun. I mean, you came 2 times, so the Refuge has a really special place in our heart for you. If you ever want to come again, we got to get you down.
I'd love to come again, yes.
You can see how it has evolved, because we're 18 years old. And so we're still here. We're strong. And some of our languages changed too, though. We started as really an eclectic, emerging church. We weren't really like deeply aligned with that movement, but we were a new expression of church in 2006. And that was kind of the main thing that we did, is try to create a place where we had a recovery ethos. We had people that really wanted to live out passions and gifts. We were egalitarian, so women could freely lead, and things that just weren't part of our old system. However, we kind of evolved. For a chunk of years. We were a mission center and Christian community. Then we were a Christian community and mission center. And a chunk of years ago, I can't remember now, 4 or 5, we really realized that every time we were having to explain what those things meant, what the mission center part meant, and then the horrible things that were done in the name of Jesus, especially to Indigenous people, but not only. And then Christian. Well, what do you mean by Christian? Because unfortunately, Christian is a very loaded word in our culture. It's done a lot of harm, and it's doing a lot of harm. So we were explaining all the time. And so we did some work together as a community, and we shifted to the language of that the Refuge was and is a hub for healing community, social action, and creative collaboration. And that we're inspired by the ways of Jesus. We gather around shared values and not shared beliefs. And those shared values I love, and I say them all the time. Their presence, welcome, engagement, transformation, creativity, and celebration. And so we can all sign in on that. Those values really guide us. And so we've evolved. I would say we're a faith-inspired community. We have a faith gathering on Sundays, but it's not church as people think of church, because unfortunately, people think of church as a service.
Yes.
And so we really are a healing community, a hub for a healing community, social action, and creative collaboration. And so it's really our work in Broomfield. We're in North Denver in Broomfield, and it is just a wild and beautiful community. It's really grown since you've been there. We have a lot of people leading from their gifts in all areas, in nature, in LGBT support, Refuge Rainbow, Refuge Reads. We have a free cafe. We have single moms. We have 12-step recovery. We have spiritual formation on Sundays during certain seasons of the year. There's a lot of things happen. Art. We have multiple art things. And so for me, it's really helped me reimagine, because there are so many people. For me, one of my most connecting pathways to God is community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I agree. Yes, me too.
experiences. And so the Refuge just has all that every day.
Well,
So,
I mean, I have been so impressed with the diversity of what you do and the diversity of the people who are associated with the Refuge. I mean, as you said, refugees, homeless people, artists, I mean, spiritual directors. Such an amazingly rich and diverse group of people. And I wonder, how do you keep that community together? I mean, that's a challenge. Having lived in diverse communities, I know what a challenge it can be. So,
yeah, you know what? What's funny about it is it's become less of a challenge over the years. I think it's because when we did really shift from shared values to shared beliefs, it really helped. It opened up something for everybody. And then people have grown. So this kind of goes back to the face shift conversation, because we've grown up and we're healthier than we were. We're healthier now than we were 18 years ago. And so we can hold things that were harder then, and they're not quite as hard now. Our hardest part and our biggest work is always helping everybody stay healthy,
mm-hmm.
stay grounded and resourced, and to keep growing. And people are really committed to growing here. Like, that's the part. There's just a lot of opportunities to continue to grow, but it's with different language, and it's different than my typical church days. Let's just put it that way. But the sustaining part, yeah, it's a lot of humans, a lot of people mixed together. Every gathering has all those demographics plus 30 others. And so we are always, Jose, my husband, he's a lawyer and a pilot, and he is also in the military. He has this really wild diversity. And every time any Refuge gathering, because he's pretty done with anything church, or religious based, but he loves the Refuge because he loves community. And he's always like, that was so fun. It was so interesting. And that's what helps with the hard, when we do just see like this shared humanity that you're all mixed up together. And it's so weird and it's so wonderful. And it is hard. It is hard to sustain some of the things, but we have a great team, and people are not there for the money or the role. They're there for the love for people, for sure.
Well, I think, community always has its challenges. Even if it's just a community of two people in a marriage, it has its challenges.
Right.
So the more people you add, of course, the more challenges you get.
Exactly.
But I can't imagine any better way to live than in community, because, as you said, it's a place of growing. And I was reading a book recently by former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, and the line that really got me, he said, there are only two states of being. You're either growing or you're stagnating. Oh, no, growing or shrinking. Growing or shrinking. He said, if you're not growing, then your faith is actually shrinking. And I thought that was very powerful. And I think that the kind of community you're involved in kind of speaks to that, because people are growing. And that should be, they're growing in their involvement into the broader community. They're growing in their own healthiness. And it's just wonderful to see such an example of that, I feel. So thank you. As you can see, I'm enamored of what you're doing, Kathy. I wish there was a church like that here in Seattle. So,
yeah, it's not super popular. Not money, it's complicated, it's inefficient. It has a lot of things in it, but what it does have is really a dedication to
Mhm.
being honest and about our real lives and committed to change, but with different language. I mean, I will say it's not, and I do believe that like whatever the fruit is, we shouldn't have to like say what the fruit is. The fruit is the fruit.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that that's what sometimes is confusing to people because they don't see or hear certain language that they're used to.
Mhm.
But they'll know when you are invested in relationship with people, you really know what change looks like.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, and the Refuge isn't the only thing you're involved in. You are also the co director of Community Heals, making spaces for transformation accessible for all. Now, I think that's associated with the church, but it's not the church or it's not the Refuge. I don't even know if you call the Refuge a church.
Not really anymore. We really call it a hub for healing community or community center. Or it's a faith community. Some people, what we say is, this is what we say, and you can put your parentheses next to it. So some people say, yeah, the Refuge is a hub for healing community. Most people don't say those three things. They say, to me, it's my church. Some people say, to me, it's my community. To me, it's my family. It's my place where I get a shower. It's a place
Mhm.
where I have lunch. It's a place where I serve. So we put this parenthesis thing that really helped everybody. So to me, it's my community. And Community Heals is a nonprofit that you were there. You were at Beauty
Mhm.
Heals.
Yes,
And
I was.
to see it. And so my husband, Jose, he loves community too. He does. And he loves outside. And so we had always done things in the water because we have a boat. We teach people how to wakeboard, water ski, and surf. And in 2018, we kind of formalized Water Heals, which is
Mm,
that. And then in 2019, which I think maybe you came in 2019. I can't remember.
I think so. Yeah. Mhm.
I think it was pretty early on. We bought a property it's up in the mountains. It's at 9,100 feet, and it's called Beauty Heals, Rest and Renewal for Weary Souls. And it's held by Community Heals. The third part of Community Heals is called Presence Heals. And I am a spiritual director and I do hold space for people, but I only meet with a handful of people
Mhm.
virtually. And so that nonprofit is really just our little love child. And it's connected to the Refuge because some Refuge people do participate. But our biggest thing, but plenty of other people don't, our biggest thing is these things should be accessible to everybody. You shouldn't have to be a suburban resourced person to
Mhm.
be able to be on the water and get some healing there. You shouldn't have to be a suburban resource person to enjoy the beauty of the mountains. And so we offer events and experiences there. We also make it available to leaders and groups. It's free. It's a free community house. People can. It's on 2 acres. It has an archery range. Angie Fatal, because you know Angie, the archery range, who's a spiritual director and dear friend and a big part of the Refuge from afar. The archery range there is called the Angie Fatal Archery Range at Beauty Hill.
Ah.
Contemplative path. We built a labyrinth last year and there's out there. And the reason, and Jenny, our friend that loved you, Christine, Jenny is a big part of the Refuge and she died 2 years ago. She was our contemplative arts pastor from the beginning. And this was a little dream of hers and mine. I always
Mm.
just I want to get you a space where you can do good workshops, and not have to worry about renting. And feel like we're part of this community. So that's what that is. And we love it and we get to use it personally. And then a bunch of people get to use it. A friend who's a singer songwriter was just in town and she was able to bring her kids there for a few nights and
Mm.
get some rest and renewal for our weary souls because life is hard and
Yes.
everything costs a bunch of money and it shouldn't
Yes.
be hard. So that's what Community Heals is.
Well, and I think that your idea of sharing, that what I see underlying this is that God gives us resources to share with others, to
Yeah.
help provide health and healing and community for others. They're not things that are meant to be held to ourselves. They're things that are meant to be shared. And that's certainly what you show through Beauty Heals and Water Heals and Presence Heals. I love that, the 3 dimensions of that. What a wonderful thing.
It's been really fun. And the part that I do love is that it's not work, it's people ask us all the time, like, and we're seasonal also. It's only really from summer to fall and then other times off. But we're like, Jose is like this too. He has a lot of jobs. I have a lot of jobs. And we're like, this is rest and fun for us, to some people. Everyone's not wired that way. But
yes.
For us, we would rather be on the water with a group of people who haven't experienced it or learning new things than just us. I mean, he and I go out and that's great, but we get the most healing in life. We just brought a group of refugees that are resettled here. There's a task force here and some families from Afghanistan when Afghanistan fell. And, there's nothing better than bringing some families who have had huge trauma in their life out. It's going to make me cry even seeing it for the first time out on the water and getting behind the boat and cheering each other on and feeling that healing. And there's no words, like we don't go, okay, so we're going to heal today and here's what we're going to do. It's just healing because it's an embodied practice. And so and it all folds in to everybody. Today, actually, we're taking a group of Refuge kids. There's so many kids, we have to split them up into some different boats, but I've got 11 Refuge kids coming today.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. That's great. Something you did recently that I also want to hear about is you walked the Camino de Santiago. And, it's one of these things that I wish I'd known about years ago, and I probably would have walked it then, but I suspect I'll never get to walk it. But I'm a little envious of friends like you who have been doing it in the last year or so. So tell us a bit about that experience.
You would love it. I do have to say, you would love it.
I know I would. Yeah.
Just the little pieces of it. But that was a bucket list for sure. And so we gathered, there were 9 women that went together and we did the Portuguese coastal route. And all of these people fit in that same category. Not everybody, but most everybody is finding greater freedom, mystery, and diversity in our lives. And we also are all in a life stage where you don't have to worry about kids at home. And so we facilitated more of a contemplative experience together. So we met, once the group formed, we met, people were from different states and core in Colorado. And so we prepared together why we wanted to go, what we wanted, some of our intentions. And then we shared the facilitation, which was beautiful. So we walked for 11 days, 130 miles. So it was just an incredible experience. And every day, different person kind of did an opening and contemplative embodied practice. Then at the end of the day, we'd have a checkout. And so it was a very soulful group, but a lot of fun. And I think for me, I didn't realize how much I would get out of it. I knew it was going to be good. And I was excited because it was a bucket list, but I didn't realize how holy that path was. I did not realize. And there were times, we had quiet days, we had connecting days. It was just, we didn't plan that. It just was like a natural rhythm. But we did the spiritual variant. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
no,
little like extra route. We worked our plans around it. And there's a route of stone and water that I've traveled a lot. We've traveled a lot of places because Jose is a pilot. And it was literally one of the most holy places I've ever been in my life.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was amazing. And we did it. Our bodies were tired. I was really worried we were all worried about our bodies. And we all did good. We all did it. We did the whole thing. We
Wonderful.
had 60s and 70s.
Oh,
60s and 70s did it.
So maybe I'm not too old to do it then.
more about this because there's also ways to simplify it. And
Yeah.
we had someone take our bags, so we only had day packs, and it was definitely a little on the bougie side, but it was really worth it for us because we didn't want to have to navigate that. We wanted to be centered on walking 14 miles in a day is hard, and we didn't want to be adding a ton of extra
Mhm.
factors.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Yeah. I think, you know, um, all my friends seem to be walking it at the moment, and it isn't possible for me at this stage. But I think pilgrimage is something that for me has become very important, whatever that might look like. And you know, so I'm delighted to hear that you've had this opportunity. So,
Well,
but
my own is kind of like that too. It's that pilgrimage to Iona. And I know you.
uh, I wanted to chat to you about something that's a little harder to talk about. And a few years ago, you suffered the devastating experience of losing one of your sons, and I know that it's deeply impacted you and will for the rest of your life. And uh, I'd love for you to share with our listeners, some of that experience and how it's impacted you as a person. Because I know that there are many grieving parents, including, Tom has lost both his sons.
Mm.
And so, we bear that kind of grief too. And so I'd like you to share a bit about that if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important to talk about Jared. And Jared died by suicide when he was 19, just a few weeks short of his 20th birthday while he was in college. And, it's still it's 5 years. It'll be 5 years this
Mm,
October. So in 2019, he died just a few months after we bought Beauty Heals. And that was the last place we saw him.
mm,
He brought some friends and they hiked a big hill where some of his ashes are. So Beauty Hills also has other special meaning to us. But as now 4.5 years with this horrifying reality, because it is horrifying for
yeah.
parents to lose their babies. It doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter really the circumstance. Ours is extra weird. Suicides, they're so confusing to everybody. But all death of children, anybody grief, but children especially, I think it's just a deep pain. So I do like to talk about it
Mhm.
because it's real. And like you all, like so many families have experienced it. Not all. It's everyone's biggest fear in the world as a parent, especially with young children and youth and at any age. And so I think for us, I mean, we're just continuing to learn how to metabolize grief. That's it. So many things have changed for me and Jose and our whole family. So I have 4 living children. And so we're young, they're young adults. And so having to live with the reality of their brother dying and integrating that into their life. And he died right before COVID. And so
Mm.
that was here too. Like it was just so many strange things in the story. But I think for us, just honoring 2 things. One is we don't know. It's been the most helpful things. And coming from a place of faith, it's really everyone tries to know. And so anybody who's like, well, this happened for this reason or God knows or whatever, I just don't believe that.
No.
There's random weird things that happen in this world. And God, I don't have a theology of God controlling things. I have a theology of God with us in it all, in the
Well, and
good.
I think God is able to use things, but it doesn't mean that God intends these things or
No.
controls these things. Yeah.
And that is that is something to deconstruct from. And so I can say the gift that we received is we were out, we were unraveled, we were in a new place in terms of our faith story. And so that really helped us. I can't imagine some of the things that some people think, especially about suicide, that we can control those things. If we
Mhm.
did this, if we prayed this, if we managed this, like whatever, that then someone wouldn't die. And we know that's not true, but we try and make sense of it. And the sense sometimes it brings a lot of harm to people.
Yes.
Try to make sense of something that you can't make sense of. So I think for us, the I don't know has helped us. That was actually, Jared had a tattoo because he was really into philosophy. And so he had a tattoo that said, I don't know. And it's from Plato, Aristotle, kind of is like all in that thread, but I know more than you because I know that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has been a guiding principle for us in navigating. We want to make sense, and I'm a human and I want to figure it out and put all the pieces together. But we always circle around and say, I don't know, but here's what we do know. We know that this is life, that life is hard and life is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to make meaning out of Jared's death, that we're really dedicated to that. That's kind of become a sixth. I don't use stages of grief because I just don't believe in them, but I do believe in the rhythms of grief and that you can have the same rhythm in an hour. But I love that a sixth one was added, and that's making meaning.
Mm.
So I love that because the other one was acceptance. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really, I don't like that word very much, but I really love making meaning. And
Yes.
I think we have tried to live that out. Being with other parents who know the pain has really helped. I was in a mom's grief group. The group just transitioned out just a month ago. We had a closing ceremony, but I was in that from early on when Jared died, and being with other moms of all kinds of child death. But there were unfortunately a lot of suicides and accidental overdoses.
Mm-hmm.
And being with other people where you don't have to say anything, you just know
Yes.
that they know.
Mm-hmm.
And my last thing is just that, early on as we really talked as a family, and I kind of came, it's not, I made it up, but it came from me. I didn't learn it somewhere else. It's just that grief has no rules.
Mm.
It has no rules. And so that has helped us all so much because we were afraid to be happy. We were afraid, even as I'm talking about the things I'm talking about, like, well, how can she be doing all that? Her kid died. And, like those things, and leading the community. But our community helped us. We didn't want to move away from our community when Jared died. We had to move towards them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being home in the early days, and Jose and I were like, we just can't be laying here on the floor in grief. We're going to have to do that when we get home. Let's just go to beauty night at the Refuge. And we showed up there. This part's going to make me cry. We're just with other people who knew grief too. They might not have lost a kid, but they lost something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's helped us realize how much we can't control, because we did do everything as right as you can do as a parent, and our kid died. And so the other part, we didn't do everything perfect. I'm not saying that. I'm saying he had all the ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 4 other kids that are testament to that, So it really helped us embrace lack of control, but also honoring freedom for people to make choices. And it also helped us be more human, honestly. We were always working in hard places, but we didn't know what it was like to survive something like this. And now we do.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but it's possible. And it is also really, we've had a lot of healing happen in our family, despite how hard it is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that. Makes us more human. I think it's true. I think the intense pain we go through can make us more human if we allow it to. And it's not easy, but it happens. So thank you for sharing that, Kathy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
It's okay to talk about. And I just want to name this. We just need to get better talking about death in general.
Mm-hmm.
And really being so cautious of the shame that's associated with certain things, and creating ways and language for them to destigmatize shame, and not just in suicide, but in everything, because it's just so pervasive and it really constricts people
Mhm.
instead of opening them. And so
Yes.
it's vulnerable, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, Kathy, we're coming to the end of our interview here. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, just, I love everything that you create, Christine.
Oh, thank you, Kathy.
Thing for a long time. And I love that. And I love the title of your podcast. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Well,
And
thank you.
yeah, so that's all.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking this time to be with us, and many blessings on the many endeavors that you are involved in, and look forward to hearing what the next chapter might be, because I know there will be another chapter. And it might be something totally different from what you've already done. So,
Yeah, I have no idea, but I know I'm going to keep practicing. And then I want to say this, because I just realized I didn't say this, is that I do have a new book coming out next year at Lent, and it's called Turning Over Tables.
I
Uh,
like that. Wonderful
Lent
title. Uh-huh.
Disrupting Power, and it's like a weary world, which is for Blue Christmas, and this is 6 weeks of daily reflections, but it's all about power. So
Wonderful.
yeah,
Love it.
you never know the turns, but I know this, like, whatever it is, keep practicing is like our motto. It's just to keep practicing and trying new things.
Wonderful. I like the sound of it. We'll make sure that when it comes out, that you let me know and we can highlight it.
That'd be fun. Yeah,
So
I'll share with you for
great.
sure.
Thanks, Kathy. This is great.
Thanks.
Today, I have been in conversation with Kathy Escobar, author, pastor, spiritual director, and advocate for those at the margins. We talked about her book, Faith Shift, and the process of deconstruction and reconstruction, which led her to reimagine her faith. We also discussed her unique community and church experience at the Refuge and the challenges and joys of maintaining a diverse and growing community. We touched on Kathy's involvement in Community Heals and her experience walking the Camino de Santiago. She shared about the devastating loss of her son Jared and the lessons she learned about grief and making meaning. Kathy emphasizes the need to talk openly about death and destigmatize shame. She concluded by mentioning her upcoming book, Turning Over Tables, Lent, Power, and a Weary World. In the next episode, I will be in conversation with Martin Poole, parish priest of St. Luke's, Prestonville in Brighton, UK, and founder of Beyond Church, an artists' organisation dedicated to creating innovative arts and spiritual events and conferences. As the founder of Beyond, Martin initiated and curated hundreds of public art events on the seafront, in parks, in pubs, and theatres, as well as Christian festivals like Greenbelt in the UK. He is the inventor of the Beach Hut Advent Calendar, which ran for 11 years along Hove Promenade, and recently authored a book, Church Beyond Walls, which describes the creation and production of some of these art events and the personal stories of those involved and their experiences of the divine through the wonders of art. I am Christine Sine, author of The Gift of Wonder and facilitator of the God Space Light website. If you enjoyed this episode of the Liturgical Rebels podcast, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the podcast, or join me on Substack, Instagram, or Facebook.